Could we see a huge blockbuster trade this summer between the Montreal Canadiens and Winnipeg Jets? We'll discuss that possibility. Plus, we'll also take a look at some other trade rumors around the NHL, looking at Carolina, Vancouver. The New York Rangers made a big splash today acquiring Tarasenko. We'll discuss that deal a little bit further, what it means for some of their other competitors around that area, including the Devils, Islanders, and other teams that they're competing with for playoffs. Plus, we have a signing in Toronto, news on the waiver wire, and lots of injury updates. All that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a ton of news here today and some trade rumors to take a look at. Of course, we had a Blockbuster deal, which we'll kind of touch on a bit later in the video as well. We've already discussed this on the dedicated video, which will be in the YouTube cards up here if you want more detailed analysis on the Tarasenko trade to the New York Rangers. Of course, we want to start today, though, with the news from the waiver wire. The New York Rangers had to make a subsequent move after making the big trade with the Blues earlier. They had to put young defenseman NYR Hajek on waivers. Of course, Hajek's, I guess he's not super young anymore. He's 25 now. Former second-round pick of the Tampa Bay Lightning, of course, was acquired by the Rangers a number of years back. It's been kind of up and down in the system between Rangers and the AHL the last couple of years. It has just a little over 100 games of NHL experience. I think they've been kind of hoping in a way that in the last year or so he was going to grab a whole third pair D spot and make it his and secure it, but he hasn't been able to do that. They haven't been totally pleased and confident enough to leave him there, which has created an opening, which is part of the reason why they also acquired another defenseman, Nico Mikkola, in the trade with the Blues earlier today. But of course, they had to make some roster moves accordingly. Hajek goes on waivers. We'll find out at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow if he's cleared and can be assigned to the minors in the American Hockey League, or if another team is going to pick him up. I wouldn't be shocked if another team gives him a chance, given he does have still some potential, but we'll see where that goes. We also have another player on waivers, but this one will not be claimed. It's an unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination, and that's the Philadelphia Flyers. Has Linus Hogberg on waivers. So obviously Hogberg and the Flyers are ready to mutually agree to terminate the contract. He'll likely seek work overseas in Europe, most likely, and that contract will be terminated after he clears waivers tomorrow afternoon. So we'll see on that. But Hajek could be cleared. We'll find out tomorrow. Several injury updates as we come out of the All-Star break. We have more teams starting to get back into the swing of things here after we had the first day of NHL action there in the past couple of days, but we still have a lot more teams but on break, so they're starting to get back in the swing of things. The Florida Panthers announced that Sasha Barkov, captain of the Panthers, is going to be out of the lineup tonight. He did get hurt in their last game, left early, and is going to be out for a little while. No clear timeline just yet, but Barkov is out tonight. The Devils announced that Jack Hughes is going to be out, missed tonight's game, and he's going to be out for week to week is what they're calling his status right now with an upper body injury. So not good news on Jack Hughes. He's been one of the league's top players. Certainly a huge driving force for the Devils so far this year. Hopefully he's not out too long, but obviously with that kind of status, you can expect him to miss at least a week of action. The Avalanche are going to be without Cale Makar for at least a couple of games. Could be longer. It's hard to say. Cale Makar is dealing with a head injury after what you would say is not a great hit from Penguins forward Jeff Carter, which went uncalled, no penalty on the play. No mention of supplemental discipline from player safety either. To me, it was a pretty obvious headshot, likely dealing with some sort of a concussion, obviously, which is unfortunate, not something you want to see anybody really deal with. So they've kind of ruled him out for a couple of games, and they'll have to take it day by day from there. It's really difficult to project those types of injuries and how quickly he'll feel better and recover. So hopefully it's not too long for the Avs. He's certainly a huge part of that team's defense and offense, and they've been doing well as of late, getting back into the playoff situation. They want to keep things rolling here. So other updates too from injury and roster moves. We have the Montreal Canadiens recalling a few players as they prepare to get back into action here the next couple of days. They've recalled forwards Jesse Ylonen and Alex Belzil. Both of them had been up with the big club prior to the All-Star break and were sent back down while they were off. And as they come back and start to get ready to practice here to be ready to play, then they've been recalled. The Kraken in Seattle have activated defenseman Justin Schultz. He's returning, but they have placed forward Andre Burakovsky on IR. So good news and bad news there in Seattle. They get their D-man back, but they lose Burakovsky for a period of time. Odd situation as well with Calgary defenseman Rasmus Andersson. Of course, the Flames are on a road trip right now. He's going to be out, and it's hard to say exactly how long, at least probably a game or two. It could be more. We don't know. At approximately 6 o'clock Eastern time on Wednesday, so basically last evening, they're in Detroit. He was struck by a vehicle while riding a scooter on his way to dinner. He was taken to hospital. They ran a whole whack of tests, and he was released by the end of the night. They didn't really come out and say exactly what injuries he's dealing with or what kind of timelines. It's not really clear yet how this is going to impact him. I mean, they did confirm it had nothing to do with him, drinking alcohol or anything of that nature. It was still early in the night. It's not like he had been out drinking or something like that. There was no teammates with them, so I don't know if he was on his way to meet teammates or what his plans were. Not that it really matters too much, but he appeared to be by himself on a scooter. So certainly not good in that type of situation when you get hit by a car, because obviously the car is way bigger. That's just a bad scenario all around. So hopefully Andersson makes a full speedy recovery. We don't know how long he'll be out, but hopefully for Calgary's sake, it's not too long, because he plays a huge important role in the top 4 decor of the Calgary Flames. For a couple of interesting updates on the Toronto Maple Leafs, goaltender Matt Murray is officially on injured reserve. We knew he had been injured and missed a little bit of time before the All-Star break. Again, he mysteriously got hurt on the day of that he was supposed to face his former team in the Ottawa Senators, which I know a lot of people find skeptical, but it's each time it's happened, he was out for an extended time, so I don't really know what to make of it. Maybe it's just a weird coincidence, but at the same time, he's going to likely be out for a couple more weeks dealing with an ankle injury. So certainly Ilya Samsonov will have the full run of the net here. Obviously, having some days off recently will probably do him well and be well rested. Of course, because of Murray's absence, they've recalled goaltender Joseph Woll, and they've also brought back forward Pontus Holmberg, who has seen a fair bit of time with the Leafs recently and have done pretty well. And they've also called up Alex Steeves as well as they prepare to get back into action from their All-Star break and bye week they're facing here recently. So different news with the Leafs, and another signing in Toronto as well, which is a pretty good one, I must say. They've re-signed defenseman Connor Timmins, who they acquired from the Coyotes earlier this year. So Connor Timmins has been a great fit in Toronto. He gets a 2-year extension, $1.1 million per year. That could become a very valuable signing, and it's a limited amount of time he's been with the Leafs. He's been very productive. Certainly shows he's capable of playing at the very least a top 6 spot. Wouldn't be completely shocked if eventually over time he takes more of a top 4 role, but that's difficult to say exactly when that happens. I'm sure next year the Leafs defense core is probably going to look a little bit different, and they very well could be an important piece from a production standpoint, but from a cap perspective as well. If he can continue to play like he has, and that kind of cap it and play at least a top 6, third pair or second pair role, for that kind of money, that could prove extremely valuable for Toronto. I never really understood why he seemed to struggle with the Coyotes after being dealt there from the Avalanche. Like, he was a defenseman who showed a great deal of promise earlier in his young career, after being drafted and all that. So obviously, makes you think that some teams are just not great at development. The Coyotes have had issues in that regard, so it makes you wonder in that perspective. But great signing in Toronto. I do think that's a good deal for them for sure. So on to the trade section of the videos I mentioned in case you missed it. Like I said, there is a link in the YouTube cards to the Tarasenko trade video, which I did earlier, but certainly a blockbuster deal that many of us didn't see coming, at least not today. We've talked about Tarasenko being traded on the channel a number of times over the last number of weeks and months as the speculation grew and the rumors surrounded this player. We've known for a long time that he had requested a trade and had never taken it back. So we knew he wanted out. We knew that the odds of him signing a new contract beyond this year in St. Louis was like slim to none. It wasn't happening. So the odds of him being dealt were extremely high so that the Blues could at least get some kind of a return. And at the end of the day here, he had a full no move. So he had to waive to make that happen. And unless St. Louis couldn't work out a deal with a team that he was willing to go to, would have been the only way that things didn't work out and he would walk as a UFA in the offseason. That would have been pretty clear. It also would have been not great for St. Louis, so they want to work with him to work that out. It sounds by the looks of things that the Rangers and the Blues have been having discussions off and on for some time. The Rangers were one of the teams that had been linked to him before, and that we've discussed here the possibilities on the channel in the past, so certainly nice to see that go down. Of course, you never know what the exact full return is going to be. Of course, he was traded along with defenseman Nico Mikkola for Sammy Blais. It was returning to the St. Louis Blues on an expiring contract. They also get prospect Hunter Skinner, prospect defenseman, a first-round pick in 2023 and a fourth-round pick in 2024. Both those picks have conditions on them. Like I said, if you want a full analysis, you can check out the other video, but certainly kind of put some pressure on teams around them. We've now seen the Islanders jump the gun early and get Bo Horvat. Now the Rangers have jumped the gun and got their guy here in Tarasenko. It's certainly fair to say that takes the Rangers out of the Patrick Kane sweepstakes. I know a lot of people for a long time have been convinced that the Rangers were the best fit for Kane. Now that would be one of the teams he would waive to go to for his no-move clause, but we'll have to wait and see. That's certainly going to put pressure on a team like New Jersey. New Jersey has been linked to some of these other players as well. Not so much Horvat, but they had been some rumblings about Tarasenko, but the main guy that seems to come up the most with New Jersey is Timo Meier, of course, the power forward in San Jose, who could be an excellent fit as well. So I do wonder if the Devils will feel any kind of pressure to get something done soon to be able to play, kind of keep up here. I mean, we'll say we had seen reports earlier today before the trade went down from the fourthperiod.com and Dave Pagnotta saying, according to his information and sources, that Tarasenko was willing to wait for 3 Eastern Conference teams, which would be all of these teams, the Rangers, Islanders, and Devils. Seems like that's the part of the U.S. he was most intrigued to go to. Of course, he's former teammate with Artemi Panarin. They've played together before, World Juniors and things like that, international competition. They have good chemistry and good friends. So that's going to be a lethal top line with the Rangers. Likely going to see Tarasenko play with Panarin, and Zibanejad is the most likely one there. And then you see Trocheck with Kreider. That's the most likely scenario. So we'll see how things go in New York. But like I said, if nothing else, this trade puts even more pressure on some of these other teams. Now, of course, another team that's in that same division, which will get a little bit of pressure here as well, as the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, the Hurricanes are in a better position cap-wise than a lot of the other teams that are classified as contenders, so given the large pool of LTIR availability they can create to give themselves options to make a move early. They've been heavily rumored to be looking for a number 2 center as well. We know now for sure. It was obviously speculated before. It was fairly clear, but now we have certainty that the Blues are indeed sellers. Wouldn't be shocked if a player like Ryan O'Reilly is on high on the Carolina Hurricanes' radar. I would think that the Hurricanes might be the next team to pull off a big deal. It could be the Devils, but to me, the Metro teams seem to be a bit of an arms race right now. In the Eastern Conference, teams are going to be absolutely stacked when we get to playoff time. Hard to predict who's going to come out of the East and end up playing for the Stanley Cup, but it's going to be some very interesting, hopefully very highly entertaining hockey that we see, especially in that division, the Atlantic Division, which should be any slouches as well, with teams like the Leafs, Lightning, and Bruins. Obviously very much in the mix there. We'll see what they do as we get closer to the deadline too. But the Hurricanes apparently do have interest in Canucks forward JT Miller. Elliot Friedman's talked about that recently in some of his articles and radio hits, but he does think that the odds of a trade happening for Miller are probably not the greatest, but given the fact that the Hurricanes have a little bit more flexibility cap-wise, it'd be one of the teams who could do it. Vancouver would almost certainly have to take centerman Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who's has a long-term contract that hasn't really worked out the way that they had hoped, and that would have to move for them to be able to take on Miller for sure. So I don't know if Vancouver would have interest in Kotkaniemi or not, or the Carolina Hurricanes would have to move him in another deal, which would not be easy, and it might complicate things to the point that a Miller trade may not really come together. I think for Hurricanes fans, you're more likely going to see a player like a Ryan O'Reilly. To me, that makes a lot of sense, but I would suspect a team like the Avalanche, of course, former stomping grounds for O'Reilly, also makes a lot of sense too. So we'll see, but wouldn't be surprised to see one of those teams like the Hurricanes or Devils be the next ones, whether it be Meier or O'Reilly or one of those guys. Could happen. Hard to say when, but the Hurricanes can do it sooner. So we'll see. Some teams have no choice but to wait till the deadline because they have to accrue enough cap space to make things work financially, which is certainly quite complicated. Now, as I mentioned as well, could we see a blockbuster trade between Montreal and Winnipeg? Not now by the deadline, but into the summertime in the offseason, maybe around the time of the NHL draft. I know we've talked a number of times about Pierre-Luc Dubois and his desire to become a Montreal Canadian, and it's quite likely that if that is true, which we know for really that it is already because himself and his agent have talked publicly enough about this, especially before he signed his current contract with Winnipeg when he was still technically an unsigned RFA this offseason. There's no doubt, and we know that his long-term play is to get to Montreal. Now, could things change? I guess that's always possible, but right now we have no reason to think or believe that would be the case. Now, we also know the Montreal Canadiens have had a ton of interest in power forward Josh Andersson, but they seem reluctant to trade him, even though there's been some what you would call pretty decent trade offers, including one that had a first-round pick on the table, but they decided that wasn't good enough. They want to hold on to Andersson. Sportsnet's Eric Engels, who covers the Habs closely, had an interesting take on that, wondering if maybe they want to hang on to Andersson. They don't want to move him now, even though they've had some interesting and intriguing offers, because he could be a piece that would be very intriguing to the Winnipeg Jets to pull off the Dubois trade in the summertime. So would it be a Dubois for Andersson? I don't know if it'd be 1-for-1. Probably not. It's an intriguing scenario with Andersson signed long-term. He could be a good help to the Winnipeg Jets. Obviously, we don't know the long-term future of Blake Wheeler in Winnipeg as well. So there could be some other turnover within the team. You would think for the most part, because most of the talk around Dubois is that if they do trade him, if they get to the point that they're certain they're going to lose him as a UFA and they want to pull this off to make sure they don't lose him for nothing, then it would be probably another centerman that they're going to want back. That's why when the trade for Kirby Dach first happened to Montreal, a lot of people wondered if they were eventually going to flip Dach into Dubois and do that kind of trade. And that is a possibility, but right now, I mean, Dach's fit in quite nicely, and with the Habs, he hasn't always played center. He's proven he could be good on the wing too. So maybe Dach is not a player they want to flip. Maybe it's more of a veteran like Andersson, but is that going to get it done for Winnipeg? I'm not completely sold on that idea. Not that they would like Andersson. I think there's parts of his game that would be intriguing to them, and it could be a good fit. But what are they going to do at center? They don't have Mark Scheifele signed for much longer. They obviously had plans to build around Scheifele and Dubois being their top two they could always extend Scheifele before this trade happens as well. That's a possibility. But it just makes you think, is that really what the Jets are going to want? Is Eric Engels onto something here? Or is this really just, an idea that is a little bit far-fetched? We know about Dubois wanting to make his way to Montreal. Could they make a big trade this summer? It's really a high possibility. I really think it's quite probable or likely. I mean, Montreal could also choose to hold off and to pursue him as a UFA when that time comes. So, of course, he may choose not to sign anything but one-year contracts to get himself to UFA status and go to Montreal on his own. That's not good for Winnipeg either, though. So I don't know that Kevin Cheveldayoff of the Jets would do that. Of course, he has no trade protection in his contract either, so a trade makes sense. It's just a matter of when the timing is right. This season is not the time right now. The Jets are having a good, solid year, have a shot to do some damage in the playoffs, and they're going to need Dubois to be a big part of that. And once we get to the summertime, things could obviously change as they look at one final year with Dubois on their roster. Or is it possible that maybe they'd make a move ahead of time to get ahead of this so they can move on, know who they have longer term, and figure things out from there from a roster construction standpoint? So do you think Josh Andersson is not being moved now to be part of a Dubois trade later? Do you think that would be an intriguing return for Winnipeg? Or is the return going to have to be something different, more on the lines of a young centerman that would be helpful for the Jets on a long-term basis? Let me know your thoughts on how that could all work out down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.